Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Dorian Brim, and again, welcome to the Towson University Software Engineering Club. This workshop is going to be on landing an internship or a job. This is meant to go over, sort of give you tips and resources as to how to get an internship or a job. This goes from the very beginning up to getting an interview, making the interview, and even what to do from the time before your after your interview, before your actual start date. Um, I made these so that way I feel like things that you might get from Towson's Career Center or from other resources maybe just lack a bit. So I feel like getting some experience from a student much like yourselves, it'll help you out a bit more. Um, and I really hope it does because I worked hard on this. So yeah. So the first question you might be asking yourself is, where do I start? And that's a decent question to ask, but you might think that I should start just by applying, right? I should go to a company that interests me, maybe Amazon.com, or maybe like a smaller company that's local, and try to apply for an internship position that they might have. And obviously, that is not a bad start. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That is the typical way to apply for jobs. But there's actually a better way to do it. And a lot of people honestly don't really know much about it, but it's very important. And I feel like it's the defining factor on how to get through the door. And that, of course, is networking. Um, so when you're trying to land an interview, of course you can apply, and that's sort of like what you do procedurally. But all the potential employer knows about you is what you put on that piece of paper. That piece of paper being your resume. And sometimes it's a lot hard to sell yourself in writing than it is to sell yourself in person or virtually, just having a conversation with someone. People are human. Humans like to talk. Um, it's easy to get to know someone when you're talking to them in person versus writing it on a sheet of paper and handing it to them. So it's important that you get to know the right people. It's also important that you do have some technical skills. We'll touch on that, but it's not as technical as you might think you need. And of course, you have to sell yourself and be confident. At the end of the day, applying for a job or internship can be competitive, so you want to be the top choice for a potential recruiter. I'm gonna focus more on getting to know the right people, and that, of course, is networking. I feel like networking is the single-handed most important factor when it comes to getting an interview. And I say this because, for me personally, that's the only reason why I've gotten any sort of interviews for my internships. I feel like if I applied, actually, I'm not even gonna say I feel like it, because I have applied throughout their website and I've gotten nothing back. But after meeting someone who's worked at a company, they usually put in a good word, or even if they're a recruiter, they could be your recruiter, and we sort of already got a foot through the door. The first door being, you know, uh, that interview process. So it's easier for employees to vouch for you when they know you. For example, if I'm applying online and I just, submit my resume and my cover letter and list my skills, that's helpful and all. But me as a recruiter, and I meet, let's just say I meet a guy named Brian, and he's very good. He's pretty technically skilled as you are, but I know him. I've seen him. I have conversations with him. I've seen that human connection with him. I'm going to I'm going to vouch for him more than someone's piece of paper that they sent through on their resume or on their application. Um, and that's pretty much it's not always like that. Usually, you might maybe sometimes if you just apply, you might get head up over the other one. But most of the times, they're going to reach out to people they know. It's a lot easier to vouch for them. And recruiters need to pick good people because it makes them look better in their company. Um, so they're going to go with the safer choice than probably taking the risk. Um, it's important that we use LinkedIn. I know people have probably preached this to you, but it's super important. You'll hear how I use LinkedIn to my advantage and how other people I know have used it to their advantage. Um, we use LinkedIn to reach out to recruiters of companies. Some will likely respond, and they do this because that's sort of their job. They're recruiters. They usually look out for people, especially if the recruiter you find actually says that they're hiring. It's a good chance they're going to reach out to you and provide you resources and give you a chance to talk to them. Um, this is important because, again, it gives you that leg up, that human connection that you can't get through a website form for an application. Um, so when you're going on LinkedIn, you can easily just search up your favorite company. So let's say I wanted to work at Amazon again. I can I can type in University Relations Recruiter at Amazon, or Amazon University Relations Recruiter, and it'll show you people who have University Relations Recruiter as their job title who work at Amazon. Um, and recruiters, again, it's I don't want to say it, I'm not going to say it's their job because I'm not really sure how a recruiter's job works, but I know that recruiters like to find people. They have to recruit people. Um, so if you reach out to them versus them reaching out to you, which sometimes may happen, a recruiter might reach out to you, but if you reach out to them, it's a dead sign that you're interested. Um, and then they can learn more from that. And again, maybe something that they won't find on your application. So it's important to use LinkedIn. University relations recruiters are the ones you want to look out for. They're the ones who pick people from universities. Usually, they're looking for junior grads um, or undergrads who want to, not undergrads, sorry, recent grads who want to look for a job, or they're also usually they're looking for internship opportunities. Uh, you can also, if you're not a recent grad, you might be able to look out for other recruiters. It depends on the field you're looking for. So if you wanted to work in like operations, you search like operations recruiter. Um, that's something that most big companies usually have. Smaller companies might just have recruiters. So it's good to know your company. Um, if I'm versus applying at Apple per se, you don't want to just look for recruiters at Apple because Apple's has a large team. You want to just look for university relations recruiters versus looking at some smaller company. You might just search recruiters for them because they probably have a smaller team. They don't have much to worry about per se with divisions, so they just look for recruiters and they sort of handle that through there. Um, when networking, you are talking to humans, so you should show respect. Um, it's good to know how to talk to people. Um, of course, LinkedIn, it's virtual, so you want to use proper grammar, uh, form your sentences correctly. Sort of just watch what you say. Don't treat it like you're texting someone, but also don't treat it like you're writing a very formal email. Just treat it as if you're having a conversation with someone, because in the end, that's sort of what you're doing. It's just a conversation. And of course, you want to have a strong LinkedIn profile. Um, this is important because most of the times when you're talking to a recruiter, they can't just go to their boss or whoever and just say, hey, what about this person? They need to have some sort of logistics to show to their manager or boss that, hey, this person is someone that you can trust. Look at their resume. Here's their skills on their LinkedIn profile. Um, and sometimes if someone's already like put in a good word for you, your potential interviewer or coworkers might check your own LinkedIn profile. That is something that happened to me. Um, when I got through to an interviewer, a recruiter on LinkedIn. I had 4 people from the company check my LinkedIn profile. So it's good to keep that strong um, and have it ready. So make sure you have your skills. Anytime you learn a skill, whether you mastered it or not, anytime you learn something, put it on your LinkedIn. Keep your resume as up to date as you possibly can, and list any relevant past experience. I'll get over to what that means when we talk about the resume. Um, and of course, sometimes I said this before. Sometimes applying just isn't enough. Networking is the best way to get your foot through the door. Just because you not only through applying you'll get that technical connection, but networking you can get that technical connection and the human connection, which again, very important. Um, so let's talk about yourself. How can I make myself valuable to recruiters? This is difficult to do sometimes. And I say sometimes because a lot of the time people overthink it. Take this for example. Let's say you wanted to apply for some software engineering position, like a junior software developer. Um, Junior means that you're entry level. It's just entry level jobs. Pricing you'll get after you graduate college. Um, and you're sort of thinking like, okay, what if I don't know enough? But you're forgetting the role you're applying for. It's a junior position. So earlier I touched on that you don't need to have super technical skills. That's where this comes to play. So imagine that you're when you think of development, you might imagine someone just sitting at their screen typing, managing some huge system all day, um, and honestly just doing something that seems really incredible. But a lot of the times they're using techniques that you learned in computer science 236. Just simple data structure stuff. It's not anything super abstract to learn or to get. So when you're filling out your resume or when you're thinking about yourself, don't be upset if you don't have super technical skills. Sometimes the basics is all you need, really. Because again, if you're applying for a junior position, it sort of can be inferred that you might not have all the skills they need. This is where this is why sometimes jobs might train newcomers so how to fit within their environment. So for example, something as simple as learning I don't want to say simple, but something like web requests or some back end web development. Um, you might not know exactly how to make a website or anything or a web application, but if you know the idea, a general idea behind it, that is a skill that you can put on your resume. Um, it's something that it basically shows a recruiter that you're trying, you're interested. If you versus putting nothing on there because now they think you just didn't do it at all. Versus, hey, I have a basic skills in web development or back end web development. That shows them that hey, you have something we can work with. Um, and you might be thinking to yourself, how can I get these skills? 9 times out of 10, if you've taken up to, I want to say 237, which is Intro to Computer Science 2, you have them. You might have already been assigned a personal project, or sorry, a school project. School projects or school labs are skills or things you can put on your resume as personal projects on your GitHub. So if you do like a homework assignment, don't just throw it away or leave it to the side. It's something that you can put on on your GitHub. You can probably tinker with it a bit more to get to do some other things. Um, and even if you don't feel like doing that now, you can do it later on in your undergraduate degree. You'll take classes like databases, software engineering. Um, you could take some elective class like mobile application development or advanced programming, which is systems programming, basically. Um, these all have final projects, which are basically just like almost mid to large scale projects. Usually might be done in groups. These are also things you could put on your resume, um, or on your GitHub. Same thing can be said with personal projects, big or small. Um, One of the things I used to have on my GitHub, unfortunately, it's outdated now, it doesn't work, and I don't know, and I'm just too lazy to fix it. But one of the things I had on my personal GitHub was just a raffle program that I written in Rust. It wasn't anything extra. It was like a couple lines of code. It was one file, and it worked as a raffle. You'd enter names, and it randomly generate one and it'll print out to the screen. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but what it shows is that I have skills in Rust. It shows I know how to program in Rust versus me saying I can program in Rust. They can see my Rust code. They see how I write code. They see my logic behind what I'm doing. And that's usually what recruiters want to see. They want to see logic. When it comes to skills, skills aren't as valuable as you might think. A lot of the times they have people in their team that are skillful. Um, they a lot of times people can learn skills. They know this. Your they want to see your thought process. They mainly want to see how you think and how well you can play with data. How do you manage things? So having that specific skill set is not as important as you think. You can have a basic skill set and you can have a more broad skill set. Most of the time, recruiters and companies will work with it. Um, Again, that's something that I've gone through with personal experiences. Combined with networking, this will help you stand out in the process of selecting candidates because you have basically proof that you code and that you have skills or interests in different topics. So you want to combine that with networking plus that to really sell yourself out. Um, yeah. Anyone have any questions? I don't know if I went too fast, but if there are any questions or something I can answer, you can use your mic or say it in chat. Do I think a coding bootcamp is worth it? Um, I want to say I do think it's worth it because if you can say that you've done a coding bootcamp, it depends on what the bootcamp is for. It's you should still look for a valuable skill set within the company you're applying for. So this doesn't really apply for big companies because they usually have different divisions. But if a company is like a cybersecurity company, that mainly a cybersecurity company, it might be good to have cybersecurity skills. So that boot camp was related to that, um, per se. That is fine, but um, I still think it's valuable and worth it. Again, because it just shows interest. Um, as long and even if it is specific, that's still good too. Especially if you're applying for a position that specifically meets that um that genre. So like, if I took some, I don't know, let's say a systems coding bootcamp, and I applied for a systems developer position, that's directly valuable. Um, so I do think it's worth it, especially especially in today's society. I don't feel like most people do coding bootcamps as they should. You should do it if you really haven't done that. You mentioned companies and recruiters wanted to see the logic. Can you go a little deeper? Can you go a little deeper on the ideal logic they would want to see? Yes. So, when it comes, I don't. If I'm not sure if you saw the intro to programming workshop that I've done, but a lot of the times when it comes, the key of programming is solving problems. They usually want to see how you can break down the problem and how you can solve it, versus can you solve it. So it's more important. They want to see your thought process pretty much. So an example is how would you go to, let's say you lived at a house and it was, you want to go to a store that was a couple of blocks down the street or something. Um, would you want to go around the entire neighborhood around the block to get to the house, or would you just want to go straight down the street to get to the house? It's a very broad and kind of easy example. That you'd obviously want to go down the street, directly down the street to get to the house or get to the store. But technically, in both ways, you solve the problem. But there's only one where it was very, efficient, and your thought process made sense and it was pretty logical. You want to apply that to programming, basically. That's usually what they want to see. And there's never really a right or wrong way to do it. Um, Usually, it's more so what did you do and why did you do it. Um, and we can go a bit more in depth with it when I talk about the technical interview. But that's sort of the main idea. I hope that answered your question at least for now. But yeah. Okay. Is there an order to these things? Like, should you network first then apply? Um, it really depends. I networked first. Um, it might be good to apply. I know that when I networked, a recruiter had reached out to me and they told me to apply. I've already applied before, but they told me to apply again. Um, so usually you should network first, but I'm pretty sure if you apply then network, it won't really hurt. Um, as long as you do networking, I don't think the order really matters. So you can network first, then apply, or you can apply that network. The key is just that you network. So never to apply by itself. Network too. And you are welcome, Danny. Um, any more questions? No. Nope. Okay. I'm gonna move on. Um, so back to what we're talking about. When you're selling yourself, it's it's important to remember when you're interviewing that it's a conversation usually. Disregard the technical interview. Just think about the typical interview. You think like, why are you interested in this company? Tell us about yourself. That sort of interview. It's usually a conversation. It's never like you're saying a right or wrong answer. It's more so they just want to get to know you. Um, and you might think that it's kind of silly to ask a question, why this company? Um, money, most of you probably might think, well, the way the society works, I need a job to have money. I don't know why people ask that question. But in their eyes, you could be applying to other places. They're not sure they'll get you just because they have the interview. For all they know, you could leave, you could take some other opportunity. They usually want to see what you think of them as a company and why do you want to work there. Um, this might sound like common sense, but never say money or a job or something. You want to twist the answer to their values. So it could depend by company. For example, I'm going to use a big company. Let's say Apple's a company that values privacy, and such. So that might be a way you could twist the answer, like, oh, I want to value Apple because their values align with mine, and yada yada yada, and whatever the values might be. It's it's really an open-ended question, and they keep it like that for a reason, because they want to see why they want a genuine answer to you. Why do you want to work here versus somewhere else? Um, and in a way, it's really all there is to it. They just want to see why you want to work there. It's never like a right or wrong answer, like they're quizzing you. They want to keep you as an employee, so they want to make sure you don't end up leaving, pretty much. Because that's just extra work for them. They lose money out of that. They lose a person. They lose resources and time. Um, and your resume needs to catch eyes. Even if you have a referral from networking. Again, I've touched on this earlier, but even if you get that foot through the door, the manager's not just automatically going to say yes because an employee told them to or something. They usually want to see, do you have the statistics behind you, because again, hiring you is a risk for them because you might end up leaving, you might not be as valuable as they might thought or something. So it's good to have a good resume as well as networking. Um, and of course, what does a strong resume mean? Um, to put it in a short one word sentence, it has less words than its one page. And that sounds very vague and almost like that for a reason, because that's sort of the only real requirement. There's no, I know a lot of people will tell you that here's how you do a resume, has to like this. There's no right or wrong resume. Um, there's just good and bad resumes. So we can go over a couple examples of that. So I have two diagrams up of some random resume. Actually, I don't think the other one's a real. I don't think the one on the right is a real resume, but the one on the left is someone's real resume. I don't know who this person is. Um, or at least it wasn't like, it's not a real resume, but someone actually wrote this resume, and for like some assignment or something. I don't know about the other one. So the one on the left with all the red arrows is your bad or wrong resume, and the one on the right is your good resume. So there's some differences that you should look on in the left resume, and it's sad because they actually don't include what's wrong about this one too. There's something else that's really big and just not good. That's, you can see if you look at the right one, but if you saw the left one by itself, you wouldn't think of anything about it. So just to read off some of the things that they have listed, the name at the top should be in legible font. Um, it shouldn't look like you hand wrote it. It should look like it's typed. You need your physical address. They need it for statistical keeping, or if you get hired. No pictures on your resume ever. Professional email address could be beneficial. If you made an email address as a kid, you probably shouldn't use it. Get another email. Um, your an objective shouldn't be on a resume. Same thing for a summary. That should be more of like a cover letter thing. Um, you don't want to. It's not the entire resume to summarize yourself, so there shouldn't be a summary page on it, because they're going to. It just makes it like you should just read the summary and be done. Um, for your education, always include everything about your education. Never include high school stuff. You're in college now, or university. High school's a given, so don't ever include it on there. Include your major on there. That's important for them. Include your date of graduation or time frame of graduation. Um, you can include your GPA. It's not really something that is necessarily required. If you have a good one, it won't really hurt. If you have a bad one, you might want to leave it out. But if you have a decent or good GPA, you can include it, but you can also just not. And it honestly, it probably won't affect most recruiters. Um, if you have any work experience, this is a actually I want to spend a lot of time with this one. This one's a key part. Um, Work experience is tough to put on your resume because you might feel like all experience is valuable, but honestly, it's not true. Um, on my old resume, I used to work at Burger King as a cashier, and I put that on my resume because why not? It's the only experience I had, but then I use that experience. I mean, use that resume to apply for a software engineering internship, and I didn't realize it then, but I realized it afterwards. Like, why would I put that on my resume? I don't think companies going to care that I used a cash register and took money and handing people change when I'm applying for a software engineering internship. You want to put relevant experience, and if you don't have any relevant work experience, then just don't include it. Um, because and it sounds like it's detrimental or just bad to not really include any experience, but most of the time they're not going to care about it, and you're just sort of wasting resume space. When you could put down some personal projects that are relevant to it, or any skill sets that might be relevant to it. And even when you're putting oh, question, can we put summer programs under the experience sections? Yes. Any programs, so like any volunteer or program experience is just like, is honestly still experience. So if you want to, that's why I really don't like the term work experience, because that sort of limits it down to work. But if you're not getting paid, it's still experience. So that is something you can easily put down. You can reword it as experience maybe, which actually the resume on the right did. Um, so it's good to put down an experience that's relevant. Yes. Whether you get paid for it or not, whether it's worked or whether you got taxed for it or not, put it down. um, where was I at? So yeah. So when if you do have relevant programs though, you want to make it sound relevant. Don't put down your responsibilities or whatever you did as something generic. So you might have seen the funny image uh of someone saying that, someone asking someone where did they work, and they say, "Oh, I handle transactions for a multi-billion-dollar company," and they're like, "Oh, cool. Where you work at?" And they say McDonald's as a cashier. Um, that's a good way of writing down what you do to make it sound better. Oh, can I give some examples of relevant projects put down? Yes. So I've said before, if you've done your school projects, like your big school projects, even your small like computer science labs, you can put them down. If you've done like some extra certifications or just some activities on the side, you can also put them down. If you've been to hackathons, put those down. Um, Anything really that involves you learning or utilizing some computer science methods or ideals, you should put them down. So relevant, and what it means to be relevant is if you're applying for a computer science company, you should put down computer science things. So don't put down that you play soccer for your experience if you're applying for a computer science company. Um, it shows that you're active and fit and social, but I mean that's sort of it. Really, it. That's all it really shows about that. So that should be some examples of some relevant things. If you had a past internship, put that down too. Um, if you worked in like a research lab for one of the professors at Towson, or if you took a research class or like computer science 490, put that down. Um, Especially if you're going to a more research based job. Um, I don't know how common people do that, but that is an option. Um, yeah, I hope that answered your question too. Um, I don't know. It kind of sounded like that was a bad way of explaining an example. But I really hope I did. If not, I can try to reword it though. Cool, awesome. Glad to help. So, back to putting down your work experience in a way that isn't generic. Um, for example, if you were, let's say you're a current intern and you're applying for a job at some other company, um, you don't want to say that I manage systems. I was like, if you're a system administrator, you don't want to say, oh, I manage systems or I maintain systems. Um, Minors are, you can put down a minor if you're under your education section. Yes, that's also beneficial. Um, doesn't hurt either. So yeah, you're free to put down a minor. But let's say that if you manage the system, you don't want to put down I manage systems. You want to put down exactly like how you manage the system or what you did. Like, um, let's say I manage and maintain internal apps like Jira or Confluence on multiple servers, or uh, maintained servers like pushing regular updates or Linux updates or whatever uh, system or whatever application the server might be hosting. Um, that sounds like you have a bit more knowledge versus just saying maintaining systems. So that's a good example, I believe. Could we put certain classes that we have taken, like computer science 2 and data structures? Yes, you can put those classes down. In fact, you should put those classes down. but I would not put them under the education section. I will put them down like under rewards or something. You could put them under an education section. Um, it's really up to you. So like if you take in, you could probably put an experience too. I think it's up to you. You could put an experience, you could put an education, or like if you did really good in the class, you could put it under like a awards maybe. So like for example, if you took calculus 2, it's a very hard class. Um calculus 2 shows that you can think if you manage to get through that class. Um well, at least shows recruiters that you can think because calculus 2 is a really thought critical thinking based class. That's helpful to put down. If you take in computer science 2 or I wouldn't say computer science 2 because the name of that class sounds very generic. Just computer
What
science
about
2.
the algorithms?
Yeah, I was gonna say that class. Data structures and algorithm analysis. That's a good class to put down because the name doesn't sound generic. It kind of does, but algorithm analysis, data structures, that sort of gives them, um, that kind of you learn something about data structures and algorithm analysis versus computer science too. Yeah. Well, you got a you got a in a calc too. Yeah, keep that A. Yeah. So classes like that. So like usually your earlier classes might not be that beneficial to have on there because they're just very generically named. But once you get up to your higher level classes like database management systems, software engineering, requirements modeling and analysis, those are good classes to keep to put on your resume. You don't want to put them all on there. Again, if you should want to put relevant classes there. So if you're applying for a position that's on like a software developer, you want to put like software engineering, requirements modeling analysis, software quality assurance and testing, data structures. Those are some good examples. If you're applying for like a more IT or IS position, I think there's a class based on I think there's a class called data science, or data mining, but it might be a grad level class. But you want to put like your IT classes, your IS classes. I'm not sure what they are because I'm not an IT or IS major, but yeah, if we put a class, should we add some details what we did in that class? Yes. Um, this is a if you've done any personal projects or personal school projects for that class, that's a good place to add them as your details. Like we made this project that did this. Don't just say my project was a database application. Say my project was a database application that managed game data on a database and whatever the project. Just basically explain your project. It really depends on what it was. Explain it like in a sentence or so. You don't want to be too wordy, but just sort of wrap it in a sentence that gives details, not just like I did a database project, because that doesn't really give them anything. But yeah, that's also a good idea. um yeah, so if you look on the resume to the right, you see more resumes that are like this style versus the one on the left where it's just like text from top to bottom. Usually it's like a sidebar sort of approach. And honestly, I feel people are started doing this because it gives the illusion that you have more space. Um, because you sort of broke your document into sections. So you have like a left section or like a left sidebar or right sidebar. So you can have like your skills, your education, and awards, like the things you'll write a sentence about or something, or like a really quick blurb, like here are my skills and stuff, versus your stuff on the right, where it will have like your full blown like experience you can really give details on. This one also includes a resume objective. I don't recommend doing that, but yeah. Question: do you think if you have not been able to do an internship yet, but you start grad school, having the master's program on education helps much? At the intern level, I don't think it would help much. And I only say that because um, usually when you're an intern applying for internships, they usually say that they're looking for undergrads and grad students, so it's kind of a given. Um, Although it might help you, or it could help you when you're looking for like actual full time positions, because at that point that's something that they can't infer. They infer that everyone's a college graduate usually if they say they require a bachelor's degree, but saying that you have a master's degree is something that they can't really just infer. Versus if you're applying for an internship, they know you're in school of some sort, either grad or undergrad. So it doesn't really help to say that you have a master's or in the master's program. Um, it might be something crucial that you should say after you get the internship so they can schedule you, but not while you're applying or while on your resume or something, or something to bring out on your interview maybe that you're in master's program, but probably not on your resume. No. Um, yeah. So that's some stuff about resumes. I can show you guys my resume too at the end, just to see like an actual example. I'm not saying mine is perfect, but it's just a real life example versus whatever these are. So yeah. We're gonna move on for a bit. Oh, what internships have I had? I want to say this at the end, but right now I'm currently interning at a small company called Aplura. They're local to Towson. But I also recently just got an internship at Apple too this summer. So I've experience with both smaller companies and larger companies successfully going through the interview process. They're very different. Um, so that's stuff that I want to like share to wrap this all up in the end. Um, but yeah. Um, so learning that you got the interview. Now what? Interviews are tough. They're they're I don't want to say they're tough, but they have a perception to be tough. But at the end of the day, an interview is a conversation. It's just an opportunity to hear a personal experience from your interviewer. And they just want to hear about you. So you really shouldn't go to an interview being afraid or scared. I completely get if you are, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be something that might determine if you get the job or not. But it's in its bare roots, it's a conversation. um Usually this isn't just a time for the interviewer to get to know you, it's also a time for you to get to know them, because again, they really don't know about your other opportunities. They think that you could choose someone else over them. So they're if you got the interview, they're already interested in you. They just want to get to know you. And they're probably just as afraid as you are, because maybe I might lose this person who could be valuable. And you're probably like, well, I could lose this valuable job and I need it or I want it. So the key to an interview is honestly ask questions. The interviewer prepares questions that they're going to ask you. You should also prepare questions you're going to ask them. Um, and you don't want to keep it more so. You don't want to keep your questions that you don't want to ask questions to make it sound like you don't know anything about the company. You want to ask questions that should build on things about the company, even if you already might know the answer. So for example, usually an interview might ask you why this company, or why Amazon, why Microsoft, why Black and Decker, and it's a good question for them to ask you. But there's always a follow up question you can ask them. Why did you choose to work here? And it shows to them that you're contemplating ideas. You're really thinking about what you could get out of the company. Um, that's almost always a question that I ask after someone asks me why this company. So when I got asked why Aplura or why Apple, I asked them, why did you choose to work here, and what made you want to work here versus other opportunities? It's it's something. It pretty much shows them that you're interested, or and you. It's valuable to them to know that you're interested in them. Um, and you always want to ask open-ended questions. Never ask a yes or no question unless you're following it up with something. So, yes or no questions don't carry conversation. If I were to ask you, versus let's take that question, why did you choose to work here? Versus as, did you like? I don't want to say did you choose to work here, because that's not a question you would ask someone. A question you might ask, a question that you might ask someone that sort of sounds similar to why this company is, did you want to work here? And that's a yes or no question. They say, sure, I want to work here, and that's the end of the question. That the conversation is over after that. Sure, I want to end work here. Now it's going to be awkward silence. The interview might ask you another question. There's no conversation. You want to ask open ended questions like, why did you choose to work here? Because that leads to like an explanation. It leads to a probably a closed ended answer followed by an explanation. Like, oh, well, I wanted to work here because, and then they'll discuss things, and you can use those to ask more questions to sound like you're interested. Again, even if you might already know the answer. um, so it's always good to ask questions. I know everyone will tell you that, but no one really tells you don't ask yes or no questions. Even if they say like the famous, do you have any questions? Say yes. Listen to what they're saying, and usually the best questions to ask in that situation is a clarification question. So like if someone's explaining something to you, I remember I was being told about something called programmer's fatigue, where like if you're working on something, and you keep adding new suggestions to your things and you just get lazy and never really finish any of them. I knew what that concept was. I was very familiar with it. But I asked them, "Oh, really? Can you tell me about a time that you've experienced that?" And then they'll tell you about a time, and then you can share a time that you've experienced it. It's good. It's a good conversation starter, and you never want to lose track of the conversation. So that's why it's always important to ask open-ended questions. Um, it's also important to dress your best, even during a virtual interview. I had my Apple interview virtually, um, with the same camera that I have on right now. But I was wearing a button up, and I even had on nice pants, and I even wore shoes because if I had to stand up for any reason, I did not want them to see me in like just regular at home pants because that's just it shows to them that you're not really prepared or you just don't really care enough. Um, you want to dress your best, um, whether that's even especially in person, but even if it's virtual. Um, you also want to look confident, so smiling, having direct eye contact. It's kind of harder to do direct eye contact with a virtual experience because your camera could be anywhere. Like mine is below my monitor right now, so it wouldn't make sense to look down at my monitor at my camera. But if it's in person, you want to look at them in their face. Looking around, don't look around too much. They know you're human. You can might just look around. Um, Maybe they'll expect you to probably like just play with your fingers a bit. But don't don't do it too many times. Um, you want to do hand motions too, like this when you're talking. You don't want to look static because then you look less human. You look more like a bot. Um, and again, they want to hire humans. They want to have a conversation. You want to act human. Um, Brush your teeth. A white, toothy smile will get people. So if you don't brush your teeth, brush them twice a day. So yeah. And when dressing, most people will say you want to put on a suit and tie and stuff. That's a bit too over the top, I feel like. A lot of the times at most you should go for just like a button up and some nice slacks or khakis. Some dress shoes, wear socks. Um you never I feel like sometimes wear like a full blown suit with like the blazer and all that, the tie. The tie is good, but the full blown suit it might be overdoing it unless you're applying for maybe like a business position like an upper management position, but at most of the interviewer, the entry level programming levels, or even like senior levels, you want to be more business casual, um, because it sort of just fits the vibe more. Most of the time, people aren't coming dressed to work in full suits. Um, so yeah, I don't want to. I never don't wear graphic tees, but from experience, my interviewer at Apple wore a graphic tee. Um, he was pretty laid back, but always dress as best as you can, but don't go overboard with it. So yeah. Um, but that's just one part of the interview. The other part is the technical interview, and this is the part where you might hear about the scary or dreaded coding interview. Um, and this is usually where you want to talk about your technical skills. You don't want to bring up your technical skills at the non-technical interview, and this might be for two reasons. Because it could be that your interviewer is technical. They could have your regular interview and their technical interview after. Um, and it could be like something where there's one interviewer that's all non-technical, then you get another interviewer that is technical. Um, so you want to stay technical at the technical interview because there's a chance that if your interviewer isn't technical, they have no idea what you're talking about. Um, so you just want to stay technical when it's time to be technical. And that's sort of technical interview, which is also might be called the coding interview. So, from my experience and from others' experience that I've read online, you'll be asked. The questions are more general. They're not usually like the hard specific questions that you might get. Like they're not going to give you common exam questions. Like they're not going to tell you out of the four choices which of these is correct. It's never like that. They usually want to know concepts. Like, do you understand a concept? So, for example, at my Apple interview, I was asked, what is a REST API? It's not a hard concept, and I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of REST APIs. Maybe you don't know how they work, but if that's it's sort of basic when it comes to backend web development. It's not something that's impossible or far fetched to learn. I once got asked a question. What is the import statement in Java or import? Import statement in Java or the include statement in C++ or the the external crates thing in Rust, because that's what I put on my resume: Java, C++, and Rust. They were asking me questions that referred to my resume. Um, these are very open-ended questions. They're very general. And it's never really, and this is at Apple too. Like, it's not, they're almost never going to ask you really hard test questions. So, but what if you, maybe even if it's not even if it is a general question, what if you just don't know the answer? Don't try to lie. Don't try to make something up, because this is a technical interview. Your interviewer is going to know. And that's not to say that if you're unsure, don't say anything. If you're unsure, specify that you're unsure. And if you don't know, say I'm not entirely sure, or I don't know. Um, but so, for example, if you, let's say you didn't know how a REST API works, well, you could say, I'm not entirely sure exactly how a REST API works, but here's what I do know about them, or what I think I know about them. And you specify what you know, because again, it shows interest. If you don't know the answer, they might ask you to try your best at explaining something. But if you don't know the answer, you can just say you don't know, or I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I don't really know the answer. I don't think I have too much experience with it. Um, it's fine. It usually won't be a detriment unless you say that to like every question they may ask. But if you don't know one thing or two things, that's fine. Again, you're human. You're not perfect. Especially if you're applying for an internship, it's usually internships are there to provide a learning experience. So it's even better if you don't know much or everything they ask you. But if you do know everything that they ask you, you should obviously explain that. And when you do, give as many details as you can. Um, so that's why it sort of goes back to specifying that you're unsure. You still give a lot of detail, or details that you might know. And if you don't know something, specify what you don't know. So just as it's important to give a lot of details about things that you do know, you want to give a lot of details about things that you don't. So let's talk about like a HTTP request. Okay, well, I know that when I make an HTTP request, that I take any form data that I might have, I package it along with the request. I'm not sure what happens at once it gets sent to the server, but I know it gets encoded to some way if it's HTTPS. But if it's HTTP, it's just plain text. It gets it gets compressed somewhere. It gets sent to the system somehow, or something through some method, and then the server receives it and it decompresses it, decodes it if it's HTTPS, and then it prepares a response for you and handles it. That's I've given some details of things that I do know about what happens at the client and server side level, but I don't know what happens in between then. I don't know how data gets transferred through one system to another. But I specified that what I didn't know about it. So, and honestly, they may even tell you what how it works or something. It might try to give you an idea. But even then, it shows that you're able to think and dissect the problem. So if knowing, it's just important to know things, but it's also important to know what you don't know. That's probably a bad wording, but it's good to know. It's almost like knowing where your mistakes were. So it's really key that you understand when it's a technical interview. It's more so less specific, and more so just asking almost near general questions that might be relevant to where you're applying at. Um, and always be honest. Again, they're technical people as well. They're smart. So, yeah. Were there any questions about that? Tyree put a good point in chat that star method is good. If you're not familiar with star method, you um should look that up. It's really helpful. But were there any questions or anything? No. Oh. Okay. Let's go forward then. Um, let's talk about the actual coding part. Um, when asked to code, the solution is not what the interviewer is after. And I brought this up again earlier, but when it comes to the coding interview, they almost always want to just see the process of how you can work in an environment, how you code, how you dissect the problem, how you design a solution, and how you implement it. It's almost never if you can actually solve the problem. Solving the problem is obviously beneficial and it's good to solve the problem, but it's also just as good sometimes to not solve the problem. Coding interviews are a lot different than what they used to be. you might be familiar with the whiteboard interview. Some people still do the whiteboard interview, or coding interview, but a lot of the times they use more virtual means of doing it, like a sort of collaborative code and coding environment. So it's more so like on your screen there's a coding environment and there's probably like a private on the other side of the screen, but you and your interviewer can both type on that same uh, editor or same IDE window. So it's more collaborative and less like here's a marker right on the whiteboard. Um, so that's it's sort of changed that way, but there could still be whiteboard interviews. I haven't had any experience with them. I haven't seen them. I had never actually seen one in person or even online actually, but um, they both work the same. They're both technically collaborative, just one's virtual and one's not, and the other one you can run your code, which is more realistic. Um, but when it comes to the coding interview, they just want to see your process. So they want to see how you dissect the problem you give them. They want to see how you can model things out, model the data. This is where if you haven't taken data structures or algorithm analysis, or maybe even 237, you might not be familiar with what that means. But um, basically, you could take you. The idea here is they want to see you take just raw data, so just whatever that might be, and try to model it into some data structure. So like you can turn a list of numbers into an array, or you can turn like an equation into a binary tree, or you could take some network data and put into a network flow, or like a graph or something. If you haven't taken 336, you're not familiar with any of those are, but if you have, you are familiar with them. If you're not, you'll learn them. They're just data structures. You'll learn how to use them. They're not anything extreme. Um, but pretty much that's what they want to see in the long run. And usually the problems that they solve you or give you are things you can solve with stuff from at most 336, like I said. So, but usually it's 237 stuff. So arrays, linked lists, binary trees, those are the three main data structures that they'll probably give you to solve problems with. Um, Usually it's always a problem where it's based on data structures. Um, it's never really a problem like, okay, we want you to design a backend, design an endpoint that does this. I've never seen an interviewer ever want you to do that, and you probably wouldn't be able to do it in one sitting. Um, and they probably wouldn't be able to do it in one sitting. So it's never really like that. Again, it's always the design problem. It's stuff that you might have gotten in like a 237 lab assignment. Um, that's usually how the problems go. And one thing that I don't really have on the slides, but something that you should do is communicate when you're doing these. You don't want to sit there silently and work. You want to talk about the problem, talk about what you're doing. If the interviewer is nice, they'll even chime in and provide different ideas for you. You're getting that collaborative, that teamwork that they want to see. Um, so it's good to do that. And again, especially during the virtual sessions because they're collaborative. They'll be able to type with you. So the more you talk about what you're doing, the more beneficial it is. Don't sit there silently and type code. Even if you know the answer, even if you know exactly how to do it in the most efficient way, don't do it silently. Speak. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them why you're doing it. Or even if you don't know what you're doing, tell them why you don't know what you're doing, or what's confusing you, what's got you stuck. Um, Even if it's a simple, I'm not sure where to start. Um, I'm not sure where to start. I know here's the problem I have. Um, I'm not exactly sure how we could reach the solution, or I'm not exactly sure if this is the best way to reach the solution. Um, it's just best. It's just best to talk about what you're doing. Even if you're thinking about it, they're not going to read your mind. They won't know. So the keys for it is communicate and really understand your problem and be thorough with your process. Um, Comment your code too, especially if you don't know what you're doing. You want to comment your code because coding, reading other people's code is kind of tough, especially if you're not a good programmer. Um, so when you see a comment, it's sort of like them. What they see is that, oh, you're explaining your code for someone else to see it, even though it just might be the interviewer, but it shows them like in the actual setting. You'll document your code. And that just makes you a better team player. Um, were there any questions about that? That I know this is also a very key part of the interview process. So, if there are any questions about the technical interview, something I might have missed, feel free to ask. Again with your mic or in chat. Nope. No questions. Ah, did I do a lot of leak code? I personally have not done too much leak code, but I know some others have, and I do recommend leak code. I believe I have it on the slides actually too. But I didn't do a lot of leak code, and the only reason why I didn't do a lot of leak code is I felt like I was really confident in my programming ability. Personally, that's why I haven't really done much of it. I do recommend it. I have used other resources that aren't like leak code, or that are like leak code but not exactly leak code. I do have it on the slides too what I used. So I recommend it, of course. I can't say I have so much experience with it. I know that there's other admins or club members that have had experience with it. So yeah. Will there be a workshop on how to tackle these coding problems or problems that we may see are similar? I wanted to get one organized. The way that would have to work though is either I'd have to get a recruiter to bring in some questions, or I have to go find them myself. Um, or we have to go find them ourselves. I have been trying to get that set up though. So in the near future, potentially not this semester. Um, it could be this semester. It might not be. We will see. But it is something that I have put in the works. Any more questions? No. All right. Gonna move on. There's more question. I'll bring it back up. Oh, what do you know? Here it is. Resources to help. Um, chat's no way I can't read this. So, um, I'm pretty sure you've probably heard of this book, Cracking the Coding Interview. 189 programming questions and solutions. This is a good book. Um, Even though it might be a tad bit outdated, it's still a good book because, again, programming questions are never really designed to teach you the solution. They want to see your thought process. It gives you a chance to practice your thought process. Um, so I highly recommend you get this book. Um, I don't think it's very expensive. Actually, it might be free. I don't really know. But it's a crucial book, and there's a good chance you might have heard of it. You might have seen it. I think it's we have in our computer science department we have a library. Outside of like the official Cook library, there is a library in I don't remember the room number. It's been a while, but it's in York Road somewhere. Um, oh, and one of our club members has the PDF link. You can distribute that in Discord. But yeah, so we have. I believe that we have the copy of this book in the York Road Library as well. I think you just can't walk in that library and take a book though. You have to talk to someone. I think it's you can talk to the chairman, so like Dr. Kaza, um, to check out books there. But they do have there is a library in the York Road building full of computer science books. Lead Code, it's an online resource with tons of practice problems. So that's what Valentine was asking about in chat. It's important that people try Lead Code. It's really really viable just because of the amount of stuff it has and the amount of variety of practice problems they give you. Um, so I highly recommend you check it out. Codility is what I use. Um, it's similar to Lead Code. They have a lot of resources. And even some recruiters use it. So if you want like a not live, a really close example of how it might be for our interview, you could use Codility. Of course, none of my interviewers actually use Codility, but some do. At Apple, we use CoderPad, which I don't think actually has resources that teach you how to do a coding interview. I think it's just like a collaborative environment. Um, so yeah, but that's sort of that for resources. Um, so I should tell you guys about my own personal experiences from both a big and a small company. So I'll just go through the process and like wrap everything we did together. So um, my first interview was my first internship. Sorry, is at a Plura. It's currently where I'm at right now, and I got that interview from a friend who referred me and with some networking. I was able to get an interview, and the networking was pretty basic. We just talked like sent a couple of messages through LinkedIn. It was only like I think like less than 15. And this is like a really small company. They have like 20 some employees, maybe close to 30. They're also cybersecurity too, but they have a development team. Um, and I got the interview. I dressed up in business casual. I went. This was in person. I went. It was an in-person interview. I walked to their office. And during the interview, I was interviewed by three people. I was interviewed by the actual head of the company. I was interviewed by the head of HR at the company, and I was interviewed by the technical lead who I'd be working under. Like that he would be my mentor. Um, it was very scary because my very first interview was with three different people, so all at one room. They offered me coffee, but like I said, that made it better. Um, and it was honestly a lot. There was a lot. I feel like it was pretty generic, honestly. We had a couple of there was a couple of the typical questions. Why do you want to work here? Um, what are your skills? How would you value yourself? How do you value um the things? Tell us about yourself. Um, you know, tell us about your some projects you worked on, that sort of thing. Um, and of course, I sort of turned questions back onto them. So again, if they say why Aplera, I didn't ask the head of the company why he chose to work at Aplera. Obviously, he's the head of the company. I chose their technical lead to ask like, why did you choose to work here? And their HR head, because they're the ones who chose to work here. Um, I also asked them about some technical skills, not like in a way where I'm asking because I didn't know. I said that I gave them like an example, like something that I worked on. Like here's something I worked on. I believe I was working on my website at the time, and I said I tried this solution of solving a problem, but I'm not exactly sure it might be the best way because of X, Y, and Z. What would you think about that problem? How would you tackle this one? And um, the way I wrote that, I phrased that question that way because I didn't want to make it seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. I explained to him what I knew about it, or what I thought I knew about it. Um, and I gave my reason for why I did it, and I even gave the outcome. And then I explained, do you think this might be the best way, or what do you think? Um, this shows interest. It showed that I'm not just asking him for like actual information, and we can have a conversation about different ideas. I sort of built off that for a while, um, and it showed that I was passionate about it. Um, and that started as my technical interview. I didn't actually get the code during that interview, um, but I ended up getting it, and that's where I've been. Uh, it's when it's interviewing for smaller companies, it's almost I don't want to say easier, but it's more lax because smaller companies are close knit. They have very small social circles because it's just not that many people working there. So it's easier to connect with them socially because they're sort of used to it in a way. Versus like a large company who has multiple divisions, thousands of employees, and so much resources. It seems a bit scary, but honestly, the only thing that really changes about it is the social aspect. The technical things really stay the same. So I could talk about the Apple internship. I got this one. I've been trying to get one for Apple a long time. I applied, no networking. Obviously, wasn't getting anywhere, but I tried LinkedIn. I reached out to some recruiters. Some ignored me. Some got back and said that I can just apply. But I met one person, and I'll put her name in chat later because it's honestly it's a bit hard to say. But um, she she referred she we had a long conversation. We talked about a lot of things, and she said that she said it straight up that she liked me. And she actually not only was she like a recruiter, but she was also like head of a team. So she didn't really have to like refer to a manager because she is the manager of that team. So it was more so she set me up with a different recruiter, and that recruiter ended up getting me through the process and getting me an interview. Um, so I of course had my LinkedIn page all updated. I had my resume there. She told me to apply again. So I applied, even though I applied like literally days before. I was told to apply again. Um, I did, and I went through like probably the most extensive interview process of my entire life, which is similar to big companies. I had two different interviews. Um, one of them was technical, the other one wasn't. Actually, one of them was technical. It was like a hybrid, regular and technical in between, and then I had a regular one. So, with the regular one, we talked. I asked some questions about Apple. I of course read about Apple's values and privacy and simplicity, and human rights and stuff. Um, we had a long conversation about a lot of things. Of course, when he asked me stuff about why Apple, I asked him why Apple. Um, and one thing that you learn is you learn how to twist questions that fit the company well. So Apple's a really big company; they have a lot of teams. So I asked him the question, uh, how would you describe the team dynamic at Apple with such a large team? It could be hard to make close connections with people. And me coming from a smaller background, how would you describe the team? Um, or this is at Apple Pay. So I said another question I asked is that Apple Pay is a large service. A lot of people use it around the world. Then now, especially with COVID, this is a lot of people using it more often to avoid getting COVID and stuff. Um, and it's really valuable to people. How would you feel that your work? How valued do you feel like your work is to people and to Apple? So these open-ended questions that lead to discussion is key. These are the questions you want to ask at an interview. Never yes or no questions. And of course, I twist these questions to fit the company or the team. Um, and another example of question I asked is, this is honestly, I feel like this question will work for any company or anyone that you're interviewing really. Um, you start off by telling them your experiences of what do you want. Companies will ask like, what are your goals? If you bring your goals up to them first, it seems it's really like a catch for them because it shows passion right through the door. You explain your goals to them. So I explained that one of the things that I find myself interested in is systems development. I like to be creative. I feel like that I have a drive for computer science and programming and whatever you might have a drive for. Um, and I feel like that Apple could be something that helps me reach that goal or help me accomplish my goals. Could you say the same? How does a company, or in my case, Apple, how would you say Apple has helped you reach your goals? Or has Apple helped you reach your goals? Or has some company helped you reach your goals? These are open-ended questions you want to ask people. Because again, it's not yes or no, and it leads to conversation. And conversation can be built off of, and then you give that social connection. And honestly, when you've socially built up with someone, it becomes harder for them to say no to you because they start liking you. Um, so it's it's that sort of drive that you want, and it's sort of the thing that can set you from one person to another. Because 9 times out of 10, you flaunting your technical skills is good, but there's a good chance that someone else has the same skills that you do, especially at a big company. So if you give that social drive, if you be more social, you're showing them something that the other one might not show. Because if someone else has an interview at Apple, they have the technical skills. What they might not have is the social skills. Or so that's sort of what the interview is really for. After that, that was pretty much it. It took me like 3 days. And they said I got it. Um, so that's from my personal experience. Um, were there any questions about not just the story and stuff, but overall about anything? Any tips or any tips that you might want to hear? Anything I can give what I need or give my thoughts or anything? Um, One thing I do want to say though, the career center at Towson, um, we have one. You should use it. I don't even remember where they are now. I think they might still be in York Road. I think they might have moved. Um, if not, they're on the third or fourth floor of the York Road building, or it might be the second. No, second floor of the York Road building. Um, all the way on the what is it, left side, closest towards the actual street that leads to York Road. They're on that side of the building. Um, they also do things virtually too. They have a internship search thing, I believe, and they also have a uh, resume review. If you send your resume in, they'll give you a review of it, and they'll give you some tips to help improve it if you're not confident in your resume. They also do mock interviews. Don't I think they do mock coding interviews too. I cannot say for certain how they are because I've never been to one, but I've done a mock interview with them before, and it's actually really from my experience with these two interviews, it's really close. Um, so I highly recommend you try a mock interview with them. Um, and I highly recommend that you try a technical interview if they still have them. I don't know if they still offer them, but I believe they did. Uh, Go ahead, Danny. What's your question?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just didn't want to type the question out. So you mentioned your first interview, your first internship. How much would you say, I guess, you leveled up or grew in that interview in terms of, I guess, like your technical skills or just, being in the industry as opposed to being just a student before?
Great question. I would say by a lot, honestly, and I say that because it's not really more so the interview. I mean, internship. The internship was good. Don't get me wrong, but I believe more of it came from just at what Towson teaches you. I feel like one of the problems with our computer science program is that we kind of teach outdated stuff. So, for example, with databases, I interact with databases on my current internship, but it was so different from what I learned at my actual database class. We focused more on like PHP and the actual like science behind databases, which is important. But when it comes to like applications of databases, we focus less on that, and that's obviously what's important in the job setting, unless you're going for maybe like research or something. But no one really uses PHP anymore for any database interactions. There's database frameworks for different programming languages. People usually use those. Um, that's what we used at my internship. Um, but there's also cases where like some of the classes that you take will actually have an impact. So software engineering and requirements modeling and analysis. I've had to model some requirements for different programs. Same thing for like testing. We have a testing class at Towson. Um, I use some concepts from there. So it's not as black and white as it seems. Like you learn more than at one place. You sort of, I feel like you get the things that you might miss at Towson from the internship, but you also use the things that you get from Towson at your internship. So it all really depends on how you take your experience in your classes. Um, but it's definitely beneficial in terms of growing more technically as a student. If you want a more better example of like me going from nothing to something, I had zero command line experience, zero Linux experience or anything before my internship. Right now, I'm pretty confident in my command line skills and my Linux operating system skills. So, and Linux is commonly used to host servers, so it's very important to know how to use Linux and command line. So yeah,